Do American theories apply in China? A little bit of history. When I talk about theories, I mean business management theories. And business education is about 2 centuries old. It started in various countries in the 19th century, and the terms management and manager only came in the beginning of the 20th century and became gradually more popular. After World War II, the United States of America had become the most important economic power in the world, and it meant that also theories of business management and dominant theories of management were based on the practices of the United States. And that was also the time that the Masters of Business Administration program started the business schools. But in the 1980s, the Asian countries became very successful economically. There was talking about the Asian tigers. This meant that there were reasons why American theories would not be applicable, and people started talking about culture. I published in 1980 an article, Motivation, Leadership and Organization, Do American Theories Apply Abroad? Now, you won't be surprised that I had some trouble getting this article published in the United States at the time. Shortly afterwards, my book Culture's Consequences appeared, and this was based on research, and it compared employees in 40 countries and territories worldwide. And since that time, the term cross-cultural management has become popular for a world that is more and more globalizing. Now, I also want to tell you about a piece of research that happened more or less by accident. And this was in 1995, when I was a visiting professor at Hong Kong University, and I was teaching students who worked during the day in Hong Kong companies and who went to school 3 evenings a week. And together we made a list of the goals of the business tycoons, the business leaders of Hong Kong, and we arrived at a list of 15 goals, and they rated the order of importance to the Hong Kong business goals. And 3 years later, I had an international conference where I told about this list, and spontaneously a number of colleagues from various countries came to me and said, now we also have part-time MBAs. Could we have your list? Because it's interesting to compare. And so spontaneously I got a comparison of 17 countries and regions on the attributed goals of business leaders by MBA students. Afterwards, looking back, but not deliberately at the beginning, I realized that this may have been the best list we could get, because if you ask business leaders themselves what their goals are, you don't know what you get. It may be a lot of wishful thinking. But these are people who watch them every day. Here is the list, and this is the average of the 17 countries and regions, and it's the 15 goals, and I have divided them into 5 top, 5 middle, and 5 bottom. The 5 top are in boldface printing, and we'll meet them afterwards again. They are growth of the business, continuity of the business in this year's profit, personal wealth and power, and I call them business goals and ego results. And then the middle is the social role of business. It's honor, face, reputation, for China, face, creating something new, profits 10 years from now, staying within the law, responsibility towards employees, and then the bottom 5 are what I call special interests, respecting ethical norms, responsibility towards society, game and gambling spirit, patriotism, national pride, and family interests. The rankings were very similar if we had more universities in one country, but they differed considerably between the countries. And this is the extent to which each of the 17 countries and regions correlated with the overall average. And obviously, the USA leads it. The USA was most similar because the MBA program is an invention of the United States. So there was a certain amount of imitation there. The 2 countries that are most different, as you see on the list, are China and Germany. And therefore, it is very interesting to compare the attributed business goals of Chinese business people and American business people. And here is it, and I have only shown the 5 top goals and the 5 bottom goals. I left the middle goals out. And actually, the students from China were not in MBA programs in China because those did not exist at the time. They were people with Chinese experience in Chinese business who went to follow a program in either Australia or the United States. But they formed my sample of Chinese respondents. And if you look at the 2 lists, you see they are very different. You see that US students actually have 4 of the 5 international top, also at their top, even more so, growth of the business, personal wealth, this year's profit and power. This is a comparison to the mean of the all goals. This is a relative positioning. The only thing which the US students do not have in their top is continuity. So they have growth without continuity. They have this year's profit without profits 10 years from now. And surprisingly also, they have not creating something new, which actually would be the image of the United States, a lot of innovation, but it was not there. Let's look at the Chinese. The only goal they have in common with the United States in the top is power. Face is very important, responsibility towards society and patriotism. And what they have in common is ethical norms, but ethical norms differ from one country to another, so I was not too happy with that goal. It doesn't mean so much. What the Chinese do not rate so high is this year's profit. It means that profits 10 years from now are more important, they must be somewhere in the middle, and personal wealth. It turns out that here, face is rated more important than personal wealth. Now, what is behind these differences? Well, of course, we say now behind these differences is culture. And I will relate this to my own research on culture. And my research on culture is based on old ideas from anthropology, which are that all countries in the world have a number of basic problems, but their answers are different. They have been developing in history. You have similar problems, but different answers. Which are the similar problems? And this is the outcome of my research. The problems are about the amount of inequality, about the fear of unknown people, ideas and objects, dependence on the people around us, primarily our family, but also our extended family, our friends, the emotional consequence of being born as a man or as a woman, whether we focus on the future, on the present or on the past, and the last one, recently added, is it allowed to have fun or do we basically consider life a serious matter? Now these are the basis of what I came to call dimensions of national cultures. And as dimensions, this is how they are called. The inequality is called power distance. Then we have uncertainty avoidance, dependence on others is collectivism to individualism, emotional gender roles, masculinity to femininity, the time perspective, long to short term, and finally the indulgence to restraint is dealing with natural drives. From these, 2 are very evidently play a role in the business goals which I showed, and that is actually the dependence on others, the collectivism, individualism, and the time perspective. So I made a scale where I put, first of all, the collectivism, individualism dimension on the line. The middle of the line is the black dot at the bottom. And you see now that on the one side you have the Asian societies, Taiwan, China, Hong Kong, and Japan. And on the individualist side you have Germany and the United States. Now, what does it stand for? Collectivism stands for a we identity, individualism for an I identity. And I identity means universalism, which means that everybody should be treated the same way. Collectivist societies are divided into in-groups and out-groups. There is our group and there are other groups. It's very important that we maintain always a harmony in our in-group. And the competition, if there is competition, is between groups, and the competition in the individualist countries is between individuals. And you see that the USA are the most individualist and the Chinese regions are the most collectivist here. The other dimension which plays an important role is the dimension long-term versus short-term orientation. And here it looks a bit like reverse of the previous diagram, because I put a short-term orientation on the left side and the long-term on the right side. And we see now that all the Asian societies, including Hong Kong, but a bit less than the others, on the long-term oriented side, but even Germany is on that side. And the USA is, among these countries, the only one which is short-term oriented. Long-term oriented societies are oriented towards saving, short-term oriented to spending. Long-term oriented are oriented towards persistence, short-term towards pride of themselves, and there is not so much we can learn from others, whereas the long-term are adaptive societies that like to adapt to changing circumstances. Short-term oriented societies are more oriented to tradition. The morale of the story. Countries can learn from each other, but theories cannot be copied from one country to another. So the answer to my question, do American business theories apply in China, is not necessarily. Academia, universities, should collect their wisdom everywhere. If you want to read more about it, here is the book. The middle appeared in the United States with my two co-authors, Geert Hofstede and Michael Minkov. On the left-hand side, you see the Chinese translation, but this is a Chinese translation of the second edition. Translation of the third edition has been finished, and we hope it can appear in 2014.